Thank you for joining us for this presentation on Social Security Disability Insurance and Supplemental Security Insurance. My name is Lisa Math, and I welcome you to Family Network on Disability's presentation from the Family Star Project. Give me just a minute. I want to get the presentation up and we'll get started. So as you can see, we're going to be talking about government benefits today. And I know this is going to be a lot of information. I just want to clarify that this is an overview, and we'll be sharing some resource links with you at the end of the presentation so that you are able to research further as to what your needs might be for your individual family case. So welcome. Again, my name is Lisa Math. I am the director of the Family Star program for Family Network on Disabilities. I'm also a certified recovery peer specialist with endorsement in working with families. And most importantly, I am the parent of a 24-year-old young adult with multiple medical and mental health challenges. So I have had to learn about all of these on a personal level. Will help support you on a professional level as well. We are going to be offering you these resources when you receive this recording. So we encourage you to go on these website links and check out again for further information on your specific situation. So let me begin a little bit about our agency, Family Network on Disabilities. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We operate throughout the state of Florida. We are funded in part by the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Health through the Health Resources Services Administration. And that funding allows us to provide resources, training, information, and support without any charge to either families, youth, educators, professionals, or providers throughout the state. We are a grassroots organization. We began in 1985 in somebody's living room, and that work of those families trying to navigate resources for their loved ones with disabilities brought us to the point where we are today, 37 years later, where we are advocating on our local levels as well as state and national levels to support families with disabilities and actually helping support the providers that work with them. We are a peer-run organization, which means all the way from the top of our board of directors down to those who provide direct service to the families and professionals, we have personal experience. We either have a family member with a disability or we ourselves have a disability, and we have learned how to navigate these systems and educated ourselves to help others. And most importantly, we bring that empathy and compassion of what this experience is like. I do want to clarify that we are not medical or mental health clinicians or professionals or attorneys, so we're not able to give legal or medical advice. So throughout this presentation, I will share information with you, but again, none of this is specific information for your case. So I encourage you to do the additional research to see whether or not your family or individual in your family would qualify for these benefits. So in our presentation today, we're going to review several things, and there's a lot of information here, so I encourage you to take notes if you have an opportunity to do that. We're going to talk about the application process for both SSDI and SSI. We're going to talk about eligibility for special cases, what that means. We're going to talk about the rights that you have in this process and the rights if you are denied. And finally, we're going to share resources that we have available, as well as the links, as I mentioned, for these different organizational needs. So let's begin with the basics. What are the differences between the two programs so that you truly understand what it is that you need to be applying for? So the first one we're going to talk about is SSDI, or Social Security Disability Insurance. So this actually provides benefits to disabled or blind persons who are insured by workers' contributions to Social Security. So when you get your paycheck every quarter or every couple times a month or once a month, whatever that might be, that tells you exactly how much Social Security taxes are being taken out that are being put into a fund that you will be able to access down the road as needed. And these contributions are based on earnings. So you have to actually earn the level of contribution that you are adding. And these are required by the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, also known as FICA, and you may have heard that term. And this comes from Title II, the Title II section of the Social Security Act that allows for these benefits. The second part, which is supplemental security income, or SSI, makes cash assistance payments to the aged, blind, or disabled persons, including children, who have limited income and resources. So we have to realize that these are both income-based programs. The federal government funds SSI from general tax revenue, so it doesn't come from that Social Security tax that's taken out of your check. This actually comes from the Social Security Act, but Title 16. And the Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, and SSI, Social Security Supplemental Security Income Disability Programs, are the largest of the several federal programs that provide assistance to people with disabilities. Although these programs are different in many ways, both are administered by Social Security Administration, and only individuals who have a disability and meet the medical criteria may qualify for either of these programs. So let's start with SSDI. To get a better understanding of what it is, we're going to review who qualifies and how a child might be eligible under this, their parents under this program. First, you need to understand that SSDI is an insurance that you have been contributing through your employment. It is there as protection if you were to become disabled prior to the age of retirement. And so, as defined by the Social Security Administration, the Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI program, pays benefits to you and certain family members if you are, quote unquote, insured, meaning that you have worked long enough and received enough and paid Social Security taxes on your earnings. So these are how you qualify for the SSDI benefits. Number one, you must have worked in jobs that are covered by Social Security. So again, if you've worked on contract work that didn't pay into the system, you would not be eligible. And number two, you must have a medical condition that meets the Social Security definition of disability. And they have a whole list. It's not random, it's very specific. And obviously during the application process, you would submit information regarding that disability. In general, monthly benefits are paid to people who are unable to work for a year or more because of this disability. So that's important because it's not just if you're temporarily disabled, let's say you break your arm and you need disability payments. No, that's not when this would kick in. This would be a long-term chronic situation. We're going to review both of these on the next couple of slides. So the definition of disability under Social Security is different than any other programs. And no benefits are payable for partial disability or short-term disability. So as I mentioned before, if you break your arm, which is a short-term disability, you would not be covered. Also, if it's a partial disability and you are still able to work, you would not be covered. There is a strict definition of disability under the Social Security Act. The program assumes that working families have access to other resources to provide support during those short-term disabilities, which is why they don't cover it. And that would include workers' compensation or insurance or savings or investments that you can apply during the time that you're temporarily unemployed. When filing for SSDI, it is important to note that the diagnosis or conditions are not the most relevant part that the Social Security Administration is looking for. They are in fact looking for how the condition affects your ability in everyday life and how it affects you in gaining, attaining, and maintaining employment, and how that will impact you for specific activities in that employment area. It also must be that you cannot do the work you did before. So if this disability starts and you were doing a job and suddenly you can no longer do that job, that would be one of the criteria they would look at. It's also decided that you cannot adjust. It's also decided based on whether or not you can adjust to other work conditions because of that condition. So they'll look at that as well. And once again, as I said before, that disability must have lasted for at least a year and or resulted in death. So if obviously an individual has a disability that is chronic and ongoing, they're going to look at that scenario for the application. So the Social Security Administration uses a 5-step process to determine that eligibility based on that disability definition that I just shared with you. The first one is if you are working. If you're working and your earnings average more than a certain amount each year, they will generally not consider you disabled. So that's interesting because you may have a disability, but if you're making a certain amount of money, you still would not qualify. And that amount changes from year to year. And you'd actually have to go on their website to get the actual annual number for that disability level. If you are not working or your monthly earnings that the average of your monthly earnings are a certain amount, the state agency will then consider your medical condition. So they're going to look at your earnings first. Then step 2 is, what is your medical condition? For the state agency to decide that you are disabled, your medical condition must significantly limit your ability to do basic activities such as walking, sitting, and remembering steps in a process. And this must go on for at least a year. So as you can see, there's very specific guidelines as to whether or not you would qualify. If your medical condition is not that severe, the state agency will not move further to consider you for disability. But on the other hand, if it is impacting you at that level, then you go to step 3. So that question is the medical condition on the list of impairments? So remember, I said a little bit earlier that they have a very specific list of disabilities. So the state agency is going to look at that list and determine whether or not your disability is on that list and that it's considered so severe that it automatically means you're considered disabled by law. If your condition is not on that list, the state agency is going to look to see if your condition is something similar to something on that list and whether it will meet a similar criteria. If they decide you are not disabled based on that list, then you would not qualify for disability. But if that disability is on the list, you would move to step 4. Can you do the work you were doing prior to the disability? So at this step, the agency is going to decide if the medical condition prevents you from being able to continue the work you did. If it does not, the state agency will decide that you are not disabled. So that means if your disability doesn't impact your ability to continue to do what you were doing before, you will not receive disability benefits. But then on the other hand, if it does, the state will move to step 5. And that's where they determine, can you do any other work to replace the income you've lost from the disability? If you can, you will not qualify. It's going to evaluate your medical condition, your age, your education, your past work experience, and the skills that you have to see what they could match you up with in similar employment. If it seems that you cannot do other work, that's when the state will determine that you have met the criteria for the disability definition. So then we go to the next step. How much work did you need to add into the program so that you got earnings, became insured, quote unquote, and then would meet the credits that you need? So the amount needed for the work credit changes from year to year, and that again needs to be checked on their website. In addition, as I mentioned, in addition to meeting the definition of disability, you must have worked and paid into the disability system for a certain amount of time in order to get those benefits. And that's really important. So you have to have some work history. Work credits under Social Security are based on total yearly wages, or if you work self-employment, what that income is for the year. You can earn up to 4 credits per year, and how those credits are managed are all on the website. So what are the benefits for a dependent child under the age of 18 who might be disabled? The child's disability doesn't need to be considered when deciding if she or he qualifies as a dependent. So this is important to note, that as an adult that changes, but as a child, the disability itself is not called into question. The child's benefits, though, will stop at age 18 unless he or she is a full-time student still in high school. Then benefits will continue till age 19, or if she is an adult or he as an adult has been determined disabled based on the criteria for an adult for the disability. So then it's interesting, there's a period between 18 and 22 where you have a young adult who could have benefits as a dependent. So the adult child, including an adopted child, or in some cases a stepchild, grandchild, or step-grandchild, must be unmarried, age 18 or older, have that disability that had started before age 22, and again, meet the definition of disability for adults. An adult disabled before the age of 22 may be eligible for child's benefits if a parent is deceased or starts receiving retirement or disability benefits. It's considered a child's benefit because it's paid on the parent's Social Security earning record. So that window of a young adult who may be transferring into adulthood would receive disability benefits under a parent's Social Security work history if they had met that criteria before the age of 22 and the parent is already receiving disability. It is not necessary that the adult child has ever worked in this particular case. Benefits are going to be paid based on the parent's earning record, but the parent must have worked and paid into the system. And again, that adult child does not have to have substantial earnings. The amount of earnings is going to change depending on the yearly figure that the Social Security Administration puts out. Again, checking the website to find out what that is for each year. So let's now talk about supplemental security income, which I'm going to use the term SSI from here on in because it gets to be a tongue twister. And this is also a federal income supplemental program funded by general tax revenue. So remember, the Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, was funded by the Social Security taxes we paid in as a working employee. This is a different program. This is a supplemental insurance program that supports individuals with lower income that are disabled, and it is funded by the general tax revenues that we pay into every purchase we make. Who is eligible? Well, anybody age 65 or older who is blind or disabled, and again, that disability has a definition, and who has also a limited income, limited resources, and is a US citizen or national, or is in one of certain categories of aliens, as they call it. So what are the eligibility requirements for SSI? Number one, they must be a resident of one of the 50 states, the District of Columbia, or the Northern Mariana Islands. They cannot have been absent from the country for a full calendar month or for 30 consecutive days or more. So you must have lived here in that entire time and not be out of the country for an extended period of over 30 days. You are not confined to an institution such as a hospital or a prison at the government's expense. So in other words, if you are hospitalized in a facility of either a prison or a psychiatric hospital and the government is paying for that, then you are not eligible for SSI. Also applies for any cash benefits or payments that you may be eligible for. So if you have pensions or Social Security benefits, then this is going to apply to that as well. You must give Social Security Administration permission to contact all of your financial institutions and request your financial records. So again, it's based on income to prove that you have limited resources. You must file an application, obviously, to be deemed eligible, and we're going to talk about the other requirements. So the requirements for being blind is very, very specific. You must have a central visual acuity for distance of 20 over 200 or less in your better eye with using correcting lenses. So as you can see, it's very specific. Or you have a visual field limitation in your better eye so that the widest diameter of the visual field has an angle no greater than 20 degrees. So it's, like I said, very, very confusing. And of course, if you do have a disability that includes your vision, it's very important that you find out the specifics on the website so that you can see whether or not you've met the criteria. If you have a visual impairment but are not blind according to SSA rules as defined, you may still be eligible for SSI benefits on the basis of disability for other reasons. So what does disabled mean for a child under SSI? So the disabled child is defined as if the child under 18 has a medically determined physical or mental impairment, including emotional or learning problems that, number one, results in marked and severe functional limitations, can be expected to result in death, or has lasted and can be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months. So basically, we're talking about an ongoing chronic disability that causes tremendous challenges for them to function on a daily basis, or that is going to result in death. There is a category called compassionate allowances, and this is a way for the government. They've created this list of hundreds of disabilities that are quickly identified as, by definition, meeting the criteria for both SSDI and SSI. And those individuals will be fast-tracked to get their disability benefits. That usually takes a couple months shorter time to get the benefits than it would if you had to be determined eligible. These conditions primarily include cancers, brain disorders, and a number of rare disorders that affect children. And the Compassion Allowance Initiative helps reduce waiting time for individuals with the severe disabilities. And by incorporating cutting-edge technology, the agency is able to identify these disabilities on a regular basis. So they change regularly. If they find a new disability that would meet certain criteria, they'll add it to the list. And they get that information from public groups, advocacy groups, and other organizations, medical and mental health organizations that give information to the Social Security Administration, as well as the NIH. What does disabled mean for an adult? A little bit different than the child. So if you're 18 or older, you may be considered disabled if you have a medical disability, or that is either physical or mental in capacity, and it results in the inability to do any substantial activity. Again, may cause death, or has to be an ongoing problem that's lasted not less than 12 months, more than 12 months. So again, we're looking at it impacting your ability to function in the world, that it's lasted for a chronic period of not less than 12 months, and or may cause death. So when they say have limited income, what does that actually mean? So income for the purposes of SSI means money you earn from work, money you receive from other sources such as Social Security benefits, workers' compensation, unemployment benefits, Veterans Affairs, friends or relatives, and that you are receiving free food and or shelter. So if you're receiving free food from some resources or free shelter, that is considered income, and that is going to count against you. What are limited resources? Well, limited resources for the purposes of SSI are things that you own, such as any cash in the bank, any stocks, US savings bonds, any land, vehicles, personal property, life insurance benefits, and anything else that can be converted to cash and be used to help your daily living and eating arrangements. The SSI limits for resources that do not count, that do count. So the highest you can have for an individual or child is $2,000. Okay. For a couple, it's $3,000. So when we say limited resources, they are talking the maximum you can have is either $2,000 individually or $3,000 as a couple. That's not a lot that you're allowed to have in resources. So how do you apply for these benefits, both SSI or SSDI, and to see whether or not you qualify? So you can go online and go to the website listed there. And I encourage you to take a picture of the screen, or you'll be receiving the resources if you receive this recording. It will be in that link list. You would go online and you would apply, and you would start the application process online. You can also, if you're not comfortable doing it online, call the 800 number listed here. And they do have services for the deaf and hard of hearing. And you can talk with an individual to make an appointment to come in and do the application. You can have someone else call for you and help you to make the appointment or help you with the application. Or you can physically go into a Social Security office without making an appointment, but then you really want to put the whole day aside because you may have to stay there for several hours to get an appointment to see an agent. And then once the process starts, that may take a couple of hours as well. It's important that you know your rights in the application process. There are many. So you have the right to apply. There is no charge for anybody to apply for these services. You have the right to receive help from Social Security offices and agents to complete the application forms. You're going to have to get your documents, but they'll help you navigate through that. If you're applying because you have a disability and are blind, they can help you to navigate that as well. If you need to determine if you're disabled, then you will have to pay to have a medical exam or test and they may be able to make that appointment for you. You also have the right to have a representative. You can appoint somebody to represent you and help you with your application process and claims and to go to your appointments with you. You have the right to a notice. In other words, you have the right to be notified in writing of any decision that the agency determines for you, whether it is that you are not eligible or you are eligible. Everything should come to you in writing. They will also send copies to your representative once you have designated that individual. Every time you have a change in benefits, you will be notified in writing as well. You have the right to examine your file. That means you or your appointed representative may request to examine a copy of the information that is part of your case. And you may review the laws that are applicable to your case and any statements applying to your case. And of course, finally, you have the right to appeal. You may ask for the information as to what the determination was and why you were denied. And then we're going to talk about how to appeal that decision on the next slide. So not every case obviously is going to be approved, so it's important to recognize that. There are 4 levels of appeal. The first, well, let me back up a minute. You have the right to appeal any decision made about you, whether you're entitled to benefits or not. You can request that appeal in writing within 60 days of receiving that decision. When the administration makes the first determination on your claim, they're going to send you a letter explaining the determination along with the guidance on what level of appeal you should select. So you don't really have to worry about it until you get that letter. The 4 levels, as I mentioned, start with reconsideration. So that is when you request a complete review of your claim by somebody who did not take part in the first consideration process. They're going to look at everything that you submitted and any original information and possibly any new information or evidence you may have submitted to determine a change in the case. You have the right to have a hearing by an administrative law judge. So a hearing is conducted by a law judge who had no part in the original decision process or in the reconsideration process. After you submit your request for a hearing, you'll be receiving a confirmation package with all the instructions about the process. If the hearing has a certain determination and you're not happy with that, you may go to the appeals council. So the appeal council is going to look at all requests for the review, but it may deny a request if it believes the hearing decision was well supported and in accordance with laws and regulations. So you may request that appeals council to look at it after it's had a hearing, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to have the decision reversed. If the appeals council decides to review your case, then they will decide whether to assign another judge and what to do with that case. So it's important to recognize every step of the way what you are being notified of. If you disagree with this, then you have one more step. It's called the federal court review. If you disagree with the appeal court's or appeal council's decision, then you can file a civil suit in federal district court. And this is the last level of appeal. So if it's appealed and denied through the federal courts, you are no longer eligible for those benefits. You can do all of this online, even if you live outside of the United States at the time that you are appealing. So that wraps up the information. It's a lot. I recognize there's a lot in there. Every time I go through this, I say the same thing. Like, there's a lot of information that I, as a presenter, have to share, and it's a lot that you have to absorb. So really do your homework. Go on the websites that you saw on this presentation and check out all the information and look into organizations that can help you navigate the process. It is not easy, and you really can get advocates that can work with you through this process. So I'm going to share a little bit about my organization and see whether or not we can support you as you journey through the systems. So FND has many divisions or projects that we work with families and providers throughout the state. As you can see, they're listed up here. We have 3 parent training information centers. That's Poppin in the northern part of the state, PSN on the southwest part of the state, and Penn on the southeast part of the state. All 3 of those work with families that have children with any types of special needs that are navigating the school districts in the state of Florida. So we have staff throughout the state that work in those territories to support families if their children have an IEP or a 504 plan in the school system. So we work with their providers in the systems to educate them, and we work with the families to educate them as well. Underneath that is the Family Star program. So that is a statewide program as opposed to a territorial program throughout the entire state. That project works with families that have children and young adults through the age of 26 with any type of complex medical condition, special healthcare need, developmental disability, or mental health challenge. And we help them as well by offering information and training and support, just like we do with the Parent Training Information Centers. We also have a special needs trust where we support families that might need to set up a trust fund for their loved one with a disability. And we do a lot of programming very specific to fathers raising children with disabilities as well. On this slide is our website and some of our links to material on our website. We have hundreds of resources in multiple languages about all different systems of care. So the school system, the medical health system, the mental health system, and how to navigate what the laws are, how to advocate for your child, and what you need to know to journey with your loved one. We encourage you to check out our website. We also encourage you to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have very active profiles. We have 6 different sites on Facebook to navigate, as well as we have on our website FND University, which is an e-learning system that you do at your own speed. There are modules that you can learn about the systems of care and how to educate those that are working with your family members. And finally, this is how you can reach us. Although we're headquartered in Clearwater, we have staff all over the state of Florida working with families and professionals to make sure they get what they need and to educate them to be the best advocates for those with disabilities. We encourage you to call 800-825-5736. That's 800-825-5736 to make sure that you give us some information, find out if we can support your family, and we'll assign you to the proper staff that can help you do what you need to do to be that advocate for your loved one. We really hope that this information was helpful for you. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me today. And I really hope that you get what you need. Good luck on your journey. Have a great day.